clock, it is 1:08. My computer clock is almost always wrong. So it's one-ish. One-ish serves ish. The most important word in the English vocabulary as far as I'm concerned. It covers a wide ground of information for me. How many reps did you get? 100-ish. What time is it? One-ish. See what I mean? So, according to the title, we're going to talk about yoga and peace and rewiring the brain. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Um, it should be easy to talk about in some regards, and it can be difficult to talk about in others. I was reading about the yoga diet today, this morning, and the yoga diet is basically plant-based. It can be viewed as vegetarian. It includes dairy for the most part. I mean, obviously, if you're a yogi, then you have the option of going vegan, being vegetarian, being plant-based. There are distinctions. I always urge people to adopt the plant-based diet. And I say plant-based, even though I'm a vegan. I say plant-based because veganism is an ethical stance that I take, where my diet reflects my beliefs. But it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. Plant-based means that the majority of food that you eat is based upon plants. You fill your plate with plants. Now then, if you have meat on the side, if you have dairy on the side, if you have eggs, if you have fish, entirely up to you. But the more plants you eat, the less room, because it's high volume food. So you fill up rather quickly. It's also low calorie food. It's nutritiously dense food. So the less meat you'll naturally eat by eating more plants. You'll get just enough. Your body has this wisdom of its own accord that you just have to allow it to tell you what to do. So many vegans, former vegans, have said, well, my body was craving meat. My body was craving. Your body doesn't crave meat. It craves nutrients. Now, it might be a specific nutrient that you're getting in meat. However, if you're fully committed to a vegan diet, to an ethical diet, then, or a diet that reflects your personal ethics, then you will listen to that urge for the nutrient and not just cave in and throw away your principles that you've been preaching about forever and start eating meat again. I'm not saying don't eat meat again if you're a vegan and you want to eat meat. I'm not telling anyone what to do one way or the other. I'm just putting options out. So the yogic diet is based upon Ayurvedic principles. It has mild spices. Again, it includes dairy products. You don't eat too much. You make your whole foods, vegetables, fruits. You make your afternoon meal the biggest meal of the day. And you try not to eat about 2 hours. You want your last meal about 2 hours before you go to bed, 2 or 3 hours. Helps with digestion. There's an Ayurvedic principle as well as walking 10 minutes even after a meal, which helps regulate your blood sugar levels. Very healthy for you. Burn some extra calories. So it's a good habit to get in taking a walk after you eat. Doesn't have to be, a super brisk walk. Get in some steps. Get outside. Get some extra vitamin D, some extra sunlight. So a yogic diet is actually based upon the very first principle of yoga, ahimsa, which is the practice of non-harmfulness. If you heard me talk for months now, since I started doing the lives, I talk about at least every other practice probably, or every other session probably, I talk about the yamas and the niyamas. I talk about the 8 limbs of yoga. It starts with the yamas. Yamas are that's YAMAS. And they are the 5, what some call the 5 restraints, or the 5 ethical restraints, the 5 personal restraints. Because they're generally framed in the negative. By negative, I don't mean bad. I mean negative as in not doing. So, and it begins with ahimsa, very first one, which is non-harmfulness. The great thing about framing anything in a negative, viewing it as a restraint, means that as you restrain the energy of that particular thing, the opposite energy grows in greater proportion. So when I practice non-harmfulness, when I practice non-violence, when I practice peace, I'm manifesting more peace in my life. So the restraint is put in place, energetic restraint, in order to gain those positive benefits that come from that restraint. So let's see. My good friend Google here. One of the best places to start practicing ahimsa is through diet. When you think about not just the quality of the food, and not just talking about health, but when you talk about just sheer violence inflicted upon animals, inflicted upon other people, inflicted upon the earth, just from the pleasure of a meal, a fleeting pleasure on your plate, on your tongue, on your lips, for just a moment, and how much suffering is involved for that to be. Now, it's often said, the cycle of life. Life feeds upon life. However, when you're eating that much meat, you're not eating life. You're eating something that is dead. Life does thrive on life, which is why you have a lion eating and consuming, then and there a gazelle or a wildebeest. Sorry, I just wanted to say wildebeest. That's life feeding on life. We are feeding on torture. This isn't a lecture, and I'm sorry if it sounds that way. But we are feeding on torture, we are feeding on cruelty, and we don't like to think about it. I imagine there might be people who come along to start listening to this will immediately have a, differing view, a differing argument, or we'll turn it off because no one wants to hear about the cruelty of their diet. There's a different way of eating meat that doesn't have to have that level of cruelty. If you want to eat meat, you can get it through a small local farm. You can get it at a more ethical butcher. You can hunt. You can fish. All of that is closer to life feeding on life than what we do with factory farming, agribusinesses, which is also deforesting the world, which is also prime criminal for climate change. So we can see why ahimsa plays into our diet. It's the first step to rewiring our brain. It's the first step to peace. We're rewiring the brain. That's going to be hard for me to say as the conversation goes on. As I say it a couple times, or if I try to say it a couple times in a row, or fairly fast, I'm going to stumble over it quite a bit. So again, what we're doing is literally changing the brain by how we eat. Not just that, by the decisions that we make. by the decisions that we make on what we eat. Begins with the very first principles of yoga. The yamas, the niyamas. Let's Google some stuff up here. So, these are actual practices, just like our burpee practice, just like our meditation practice, just like our breath practice, just like our time on the mat doing yoga. We practice all of those. The difference with yoga doesn't end, doesn't even begin when you step on the mat. It's just a start. It should begin with those ethical principles, with those restraints that we, again, willingly, happily, joyfully place upon ourselves in order to derive the full benefits that come from their practice. The second yama is satya, truthfulness. It's framed in the negative. Again, it's framed as in non-lying or non-falsehood. However, we put that restraint there. Can you imagine what it means when we practice non-lying to ourselves? It means we investigate the thoughts that we have. Is it true? Can we absolutely know for certain that it's true? And if we don't know, it's as good as a falsehood because we don't know. Anything that we say or act upon just on that belief would be wrong, and we wouldn't be practicing truthfulness. It also means if we said something, it would be true. If we made an intent, I'm going to do this, we would know it would come to fruition because we only speak the truth. We only think the truth. Or I should say, we only entertain thoughts that are based in truth. Because we don't always get the opportunity to pick and choose the thoughts that we have. Thoughts just happen. They're energetic patterns in the brain. I don't know why we decide to believe every single one that we have, because we have so many, and yet we pick and choose. Well, this one, I'll accept. This one, I don't. This one, boy, if I said it out loud, people would think I was absolutely crazy. And yet, as we sift through them, we'll say, okay, let's take this one. Let's deny this one. It's kind of weird when you think about it. The important thing to remember, one of the first things that we notice when we're meditating, first we notice all these thoughts, crazy thoughts, random thoughts, imaginative thoughts, falsehoods, truths, just the entire spectrum of what we are capable of thinking. But as we watch and as our meditation deepens, we notice that we're not really controlling those thoughts. They're just flittering in and out, happening, energetic patterns again. And as we keep noticing, we find that, wait a minute, if I'm noticing those thoughts, that must mean I'm the awareness that is allowing these thoughts to pass through the mind. It means these thoughts aren't me. It means that I've been basing my entire life on assumptions, on the belief that I am these thoughts, that I am, these thoughts have some sort of intimate connection, intimate relationship with my being, instead of just being these energetic patterns passing through. That's our first glimpse of freedom. That's our first glimpse of moksha, liberation. When we follow through with it, when we just keep investigating, when we keep practicing the yamas, 5 ethical restraints, the whole world starts to open up, our whole inner world starts to open up more and more. So that's the importance of speaking the truth. again, it starts to rewire our brain. And again, it rewires it towards peace. Because almost every assumption that we make based upon another, based upon another race, based upon another nation, based upon any group of people, is a thought that probably isn't true. If our thoughts are based upon truthfulness, if we dismiss those thoughts that aren't true, and we only practice, we only believe, we only base our lives upon thoughts that are absolutely true, thoughts that we absolutely know for certain are true, then a large amount of prejudice, a large amount of judgment, a large amount of hatred towards anybody is simply let go. It can no longer sustain itself. We can no longer sustain it with our energy of belief because we simply don't have that belief anymore. It's actually pretty amazing when you think about it. 2 practices so far. There's 10 yamas, or there's 10 yamas and niyamas, 5 of each. There's 5 yamas, there's 5 niyamas. We are two yamas in, and already we're beginning to rewire the brain. Little things. So, the third, non-stealing. Sorry for a little pause. Letting the words come to me. How does non-stealing, we all know the obvious. We were all taught from a young age stealing is wrong, and it is. However, we weren't always taught the extent of how we steal, what we steal, the little things that we think it's harmless, how we steal from other people just by our selfishness, by our own belief in the self. I'm trying to think of a better way of wording that. Our own belief in a separate self from others. That we are stealing safety, we are stealing kindness, we are stealing welcomeness by clinging to the beliefs that we have about other people. All of these, whenever you start to think about how do I practice this, it goes much, much deeper. Not just not stealing. What about not stealing from ourselves? If we don't practice truthfulness, if we don't practice ahimsa, we are stealing ourselves from the potentiality of rewiring the brain for peace. If we don't practice the full extent of yoga, if we claim to be yogis and we're not practicing the full extent of yoga, we are stealing ourselves the opportunity of liberation. It's just different ways of thinking about it. Start with the basics. Don't steal. We can go start with the basics of ahimsa. Don't be a dick. And proceed from there. See how it goes. The fourth one is a difficult one, brahmacharya, which in its negative framing or reframing would be practicing celibacy. However, a deeper understanding would be practicing the right use of energy. So we're not necessarily say, abstaining from sex. But when you watching that energy, how you're spending it, when you're practicing non-stealing and you're not stealing that energy from yourself, then you're returning to the roots of what celibacy really is, which is cultivating that energy, sexual energy, the energy of desire, the same energy that created the universe, the same energy that sparked the Big Bang from that singularity of existence. We're tapping into it. We're expanding it. we're becoming the very essence of who we are. We're becoming that energetic structure, and we're using it in creative manners. We are also deepening our intimacy with those we love. It's a subject not everyone wants to think about or talk about. Who wants to be celibate? But again, it's not saying abstain completely from sexual activity. What it's saying is be mindful of how you spend that sexual energy, how you spend all of your energy, how you channel your desire, where it goes, what it's used for. Are you using it for mindless sex? Are you using it just for self-gratification? All of these things, all they ask you to do is think about what you're doing. Be mindful of what you're doing and see how it works. When you are practicing, when you're using, cultivating that energy, then again, you are literally rewiring. And I using that word purposely so, because we're creating new neurological pathways in the mind, in the brain, new channels opening up that are going to lead us towards a more creative, a more enlightened, a more awakened world. How do you change the world? Start with you. Make the necessary changes in yourself. See what happens. See how it goes. See where it leads you. If you're feeling more peaceful, then we are already in the process of creating a more peaceful world. Again, you're creating those pathways in the mind, in the brain. The last yama is non-greed or non-hoarding. We can trace it all the way back to diet. We can't just have a cheeseburger. We gotta have a bacon cheeseburger. We can't just have a bacon cheeseburger. We have to have a double bacon cheeseburger. We can't just have fries. We have to have a double order of fries. Did you know that in order for most Western nations to have meat, it literally takes food away from undeveloped nations who rely upon grains? We could feed virtually every starving person in the world with the amount of grains produced that we feed to cattle, to chickens, to pigs, hogs. Feed almost every person. There's enough food for everyone to eat. However, when we feed it to cattle, then only a few can eat. Not everyone across the world has that opportunity to eat like we do. Goes back to ahimsa, goes back to truthfulness, goes back to not stealing. It goes back to the right use of energy, and it goes to non-greed, non-hoarding. How often do you think about that double bacon cheeseburger other than yum when you're eating it? Chances are not, you don't put much thought into it. We should though. Everything will change. Everything changes through mindfulness. Everything. The energy changes. The brain changes. Again, we start to rewire the brain neurologically because we're thinking in a different manner, in an entirely different way, which means we're creating that new pathway. And that new pathway will lead us directly to peace. Once we are at peace within ourselves, we're at peace within the world. Once we're at peace within the world, we are in peace with other people. And so it spreads. Gandhi was a yogi, practiced ahimsa. As a matter of fact, that was his guiding principle for freeing his nation from the British Empire, adopted by Dr. Martin Luther King for the Civil Rights Movement. Look at the changes that came about. So, 5 yamas. Niyamas. Niyamas are more personal observances that we do. It's more of a personal nature. Cleanliness. Practice cleanliness. Good thing. Brush your teeth. Take a shower. Wash your feet. But we can trace all of these back to the yamas as well. Remember, these are the niyamas. And are we practicing cleanliness of thought? Are we practicing cleanliness of habit? Are we practicing cleanliness in our relationships towards other people? Another word for cleanliness is purity. Are our thoughts based upon purity? Are they based upon truthfulness? Are our relationships based upon purity, meaning that we love and respect the people that we're spending time with? The second niyama is contentment, which is a true practice. We practice contentment, meaning, doesn't mean that we don't want to change. It doesn't mean, the whole topic here is rewiring the brain to change towards a more peaceful nature, for a more peaceful world, more peaceful community, more peaceful household, and a more peaceful inner state of being. So contentment isn't about not making changes or wanting to make changes. It means accepting what is now, because nothing's going to change. Einstein said, nothing changes until something's in motion. So contentment is recognizing, this is what I have now. I accept reality as is, and yet I want to broaden this. I want to expand this. I want to bring this into existence. I want to whatever. So we take that base of contentment and we start thinking, how can I help others get this same ease of contentment, this same ease of being, this same peacefulness? Contentment basically comes down to, how may I serve? We can take all of these and trace them back to, how may I serve? The third yama, discipline or burning enthusiasm, or our practice. I always like this one because I like disciplines. Not saying I was always the most disciplined person in the world, and it doesn't mean discipline as in adhering to something, but as in having a discipline. My discipline is meditation. My discipline is my diet. It's breath work. It's practicing yoga asanas every day. And sticking with them. My practice is burpees. That's my burning enthusiasm. That's my, when you give yourself to it, it becomes the path towards liberation. Burpees can be a complete path of yoga if you practice it according to the guidelines offered here. The fourth, study of the self, study of sacred texts, Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the Quran, the Torah. Aldo, how are you? All those, actually, Aldo, because I'm talking about yoga, and I did the 5 ethical restraints, and now I'm in the 5 personal observances that we do. And this one, the fourth one, is the study of the self and the study of text. And that fits in right into your category, because you have certainly studied the texts that have shaped your life, as you talked about in your Neville video, as well as studying the self, because reading books does you no good whatsoever if you can't apply what you're reading to your own personal life. It goes back, I've been quoting Gandhi quite a bit here. You can't talk about yoga You can't talk about striving for peace, inner peace as well as outer peace, without thinking of Gandhi and his most famous saying of be the change that you want to see. That is studying the self. Because unless you know who and what you are right now, whether it's true or not, if you don't examine it, you can't move in any direction. You're stuck. You're stuck in that belief pattern of this is who I am. If you're a smoker, if you're a drinker, if you're a drug user, and all you think about is this is who I am. I'm an addict. I'm a liar. I'm a thief. I'm an abuser. I'm a whatever. You're still studying yourself, but you're studying negative aspects of yourself. You're not going deep enough. Who is it that has all these beliefs? What is aware of those beliefs? Trace that back. That awareness is who you are. Until you can tap into that awareness, you can't make the true interchanges. You just you exchange them for a different belief system. What we want to do is hold all our beliefs lightly, be that awareness that holds those beliefs, so that we're always practicing what is true, what is real. We're founded in reality and not just at the whim of a different belief system. So we study the self, so we ask ourselves those important questions. Who am I? Why am I here? We don't settle for any answer. We just keep diving into mystery, diving into mystery, diving into mystery. Any answer that we give ourselves is simply made up. It's a description, not the actuality. Remember in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, they say the map is not the territory. The meal is not the menu. Aldo says, we humans make the mistake of only seeing our flaws. So true. As well as pumping ourselves up with false assumptions that we throw out there in the world of who we think we are. As Carlos Castaneda talks about it, or calls it our self-importance. That we go through life holding this extreme self-importance, while at the same time making the mistake of only seeing our flaws. But we want to project something bigger to the world. So we have this fragile idea of who we are inside and this overinflated idea of who we are on the outside. Aldo says we must dig deeper into our powers, which the whole study of the self. That's what Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras talks about. The siddhis, the inner power of who we are coming into play in the universe, the more we come to realize who and what we truly are. As the mind calms, as the mind gets calmer and calmer through meditation, through contemplation, through self-inquiry, asking ourselves, who am I? It expands. And it expands in so many ways, so many unbelievable ways, that we tap into this super creativity. It's how everyone who's accomplished this greatness, Mozart, Beethoven, Einstein, the great writers of the world, calm, clear mind, being able to tap into that. This is why Beethoven believed he didn't write his symphonies. He heard them. It was the music of the spheres, and he somehow could tap into them. Even when he lost his hearing, in his mind's ear, his mind's hearing, he heard their symphonies playing, and he could put it down, and then he could play it. There's no genius that is separate from us. There's just geniuses who are more aware of those specific powers than we are. All we have to do, first, relax. Nothing comes from tension alone, relax, and things start to unfold. It's the whole process of meditation. We're relaxing the mind, we're relaxing the body, we're getting calm. And as we get calm, the brain changes, it rewires. We open more neural pathways in the mind. The more neural pathways that we use, that we're aware of, that we have access to, the more the world opens up for the things that we can do. Aldo says he was truly amazing. Agree. We're all geniuses. We are. And again, most of us have this unique combination of overselling ourselves in so many ways and underselling ourselves in so many ways as well. We overcompensate for, as you said earlier, that we over-identify with our failures, and we do that on the inside, and then we compensate by, it's like a blowfish puffing itself up in self-importance, so the world thinks that we're this big scary thing, and on the inside we're fragile. We're still that child that was yelled at by their parents or by a teacher or by a clergyman or by whatever, that was scared, alone, afraid, needed help and didn't get it. We have to make peace with that child. And then we're at true peace with ourselves, and then we get true peace in the world. When you think of all these leaders who are in conflict with each other, and they're bringing armies at play right now, imagine how fragile they are on the inside. They're the same as you. Putin is the same as me. He was a kid. He had that same innocence that somehow was struck down by someone somewhere. He has the same misbelief of thinking that he's his thoughts, his beliefs. And yet at the same time, he is also pure awareness. He's also that peacefulness. He's also that same genius as Beethoven. Otto says, meditation has definitely changed the way I live, even though my mind is still very busy. But those couple of seconds I get of quietness have been so valuable. One thing to remember, an important thing to remember, the nature of the brain is to have thoughts. That's the purpose of the brain. So when you're meditating, there's no real point in trying to silence the brain, silence the thoughts, because you're denying the nature of the brain. The key is to realize that the mind itself is not the brain. So as we meditate, we come to see that between everything, there is an ever-present gap. There's always silence. The mind is always silence. As Herman Melville said, the great author of Moby Dick, silence is the only true voice of God. And it's always present. It's the all-pervading isness of who and what we are, of the universe itself. If everything was quiet, we would hear the hum of the universe. We would hear the great Om. So when we're having these thoughts, you just let the thoughts alone. Let them do what they want. You keep coming back to the object of your meditation, be it the breath, be it a prayer, be it a mantra, doesn't matter what it is, a body sensation. You just keep coming back to it. And eventually, you fall into that gap between each thought. If you look at a paragraph on a page, you notice there's a gap between each word. There's a gap between each paragraph. That's emptiness. When we're having thoughts, there's a gap between each thought, because it's only through silence that a thought has meaning. Otherwise, it would just be a string of noise. We wouldn't be able to differentiate one word from another. It would just be a string, a sound, with no end, no beginning. So that silence is already there. And as we meditate, we slip into it. But we never know that we're slipping into it because silence is the absence of experience. And how can you know an absence except by being? And when you come out of it, like Aldo says, there's few seconds. And it's probably longer than a few seconds, but it just feels like a few seconds. And you think something amazing just happened. I wasn't there to experience it because I was the experience itself. I was the observer. I was the witness. I was that all-pervading awareness. Aldo says, yes, just keep coming back to it. I came to terms with that. A lot of people stop meditating because they think it should be silent. Exactly. They have the misperception of a Zen state of mind. I have to get to that Zen state of mind. However, the Zen state of mind is what you just said, coming to terms that the brain thinks. And yet beneath that is that level of silence that's always present. Aldo says, thank you for sharing this, Eric. My pleasure. So I love talking about this. It's my certain subjects. Mocha will vouch for this if she was here right now. If you get me started talking about yoga, meditation, breath work, burpees, anything about nature, any type of book, ultra running, the things that kettlebells, the things that I love, I'm all in. That was the whole point of me starting to do the live was basically Mocha was so tired of listening to me, I had to open up an entire YouTube channel just to keep talking about the stuff I love about. So the one last thing on the niyamas. I covered the 5 yamas. I covered 4 of the 5 niyamas. One last thing, and then we'll shut down the conversation for the day, is surrender. Surrender to a higher being. Surrender to a higher power. Contemplate a higher power. Whatever that is to you. Very similar to the 12 steps. An important concept, because what we're saying when we surrender is, I'm not the one in charge. There's something larger at play that I am part of. I'm not separate from, but it is not the ego. It's not who I think I am. It's who I truly am. So, before we end up from there, Aldo says, I would like to share this with you. Sorry. Last year, meditating, all of a sudden, I started crying, and the joy came to me. That took years of meditating. That's why it's so important. Well, for one, it's an amazing experience, an amazing story, and a beautiful thing to have happen to you, because it means it was that cathartic moment, that release. It was what we just talked about. It was that surrender, that trust, merging in that silence, coming through with tears, cleansing you, and then there's just that pure joy, just for a moment. And as you said, that took years of meditating. What a shame, all those people who start meditating, and then as you said, they stop because they think it should be a certain way, and they never get to that point that you got to. That's the amazing thing. That's the amazing promise of meditation. Remember, the whole path of yoga starts with those ethical, personal restraints, through the observances, through the posture, through the breath work, and then it leads you through meditation to surrender. And that moment of tears and then joy, that's true surrender, Aldo. That's you just saying, here I am. I'm part of the beauty of the universe. Tears falling, because when you recognize your own strength and power and beauty, and knowing that it's not separate from the universe, how can you not be full of joy? How can you not shed a tear? It's overwhelming. Our pure beingness is overwhelming. And when we see it, the ego is fried. It might still come back, but it doesn't have the same amount of power. We no longer invest the same amount of energy in the ego as we do in the isness, in the beingness of who we are. Aldo says, never knew. Thank you for explaining. Honestly, I think on an intuitive level, you knew. That's what that joy was all about. Joy is synonymous with who we are. Joy isn't the same as that type of happiness that comes and go. Joy has a place for suffering, a place for sorrow, a place for grief. Doesn't deny any of those things. You can be joyful and still be in grief. Reminds me when my father passed away, brokenhearted. Cared for me my entire life. During his last few years, I had the privilege of caring for him as his caregiver. And when he was gone, I was grieving, and yet I was filled with this overwhelming joy of having been able to care for him, of having him care for me, of having that relationship, of knowing also that in essence, my father still exists and always would, never be apart, never be other than that sheer existence of who he always was. So, yeah, joy. It all comes down to joy. Joy is liberation. And that's the entire path of yoga, is going to liberation, moksha in Sanskrit. Thank you, Aldo. He offered rest in peace to my father. Yeah, tomorrow actually will be 2 years since he passed away. And he passed away at home, first day in hospice. Came out from the hospital, set the bed up, had the hospice nurse explain to me everything to do, explain to my brother and I. And later that evening, I heard him very agitated. And I came down to check on him, and as was his way, he looked at me and said, why are you awake? I didn't wake you up, did I? Apologizing. He was in pain. He was, again, just had this agitated energy, like something was on the verge of happening. And yet, he paused to make sure I was okay. Tells you everything you need to know about my father, about his relationship with me. And we talked for a bit. I gave him some medicine, and he started shaking. He started telling me that he couldn't do it. And I kept asking, what can't you do? And he gave this shudder, and I took his hand, and he passed away. Aldo says you're very blessed to be able to be there with him on that last moments. Yeah, he made it home. He made it home. He did not want to be in the hospital separate. I was so scared for 2 years, which led to stress all during the shutdown through COVID, that I couldn't keep him safe, that he would die alone and isolated, unable to have any contact with any family. So I did just everything possible to make sure I shut down my business. He was not going to die of COVID if I could help it. If I could do whatever I could to keep him safe, I was more than willing to do so. Same with Mocha. I probably couldn't have done it without her help for me. So, all right, guys. Coming up on 50 minutes. I'm trying to keep things tight in the usually around the half hour, but I was given the good fortune to have a conversation with my friend Aldo, which is um, always an important thing, always something I look forward to. And uh, it was nice that um, he came in when he did, just basically steered the conversation in the perfect way, how it needed to unfold. Um, thank you for being, Aldo says, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate you being there. Uh, it's still, talking about it, it's still a really cathartic thing for me. Um, like I said, it was a really stressful year, not caring for my father, but just that worry that, I didn't have any experience as a caregiver. Well, I was a caregiver with my father for my mother during her decline of um, Alzheimer's. But with my father, I felt very alone, very fragile, very inadequate in what I would be able to do, which is why it was so important to have Mocha there. Um, and actually, you know, I guess it's coming out because tomorrow will be that 2 year anniversary, and it still feels as fresh right now talking about it as if it just happened yesterday, or if it's happening right now. So I appreciate you listening, Aldo, and being there to discuss it. And again, um, you came in at the right time because I was talking about the study of the self and studying sacred texts, important books. Um, and I can't think about that and have a conversation about that without thinking about you, because you put that energy out there in every single one of your talks. Everything you talk about, everything you do, every workout is just infused with passion and the desire to help people. Um, Man, you deserve thousands of subscribers because you got an important message that you're putting out there. So anything I can do to help you get there, you just let me know for sure. So, all right, guys, going to end it here for the day. Aldo and I were talking about meditation, and that is exactly what I'm going to do right now. Um, this is coming up on my last meditation session for the day. I had one about 4 in the morning, and then I do another one somewhere between 2 and 3, uh, twice a day, every day. It's what we do. Aldo says thank you, and they will come. I believe they will. And like I said, I'm going to do what I can to help you get there. You have a good day. Thanks again. I will see everyone tomorrow for morning burpees, and then afternoon talk about whatever. Aldo says have a great Sunday. Me too. Quick 10 minutes. Excellent. All right, guys. Take care.